I'm Kathy Whyte, and this is the Southern Tier Close-Up, a weekly public affairs presentation of this station. I had this harebrained idea as I was talking to some guy named Akshar, a couple guys named Akshar, that one of the things that I don't think the public really has a total grip on is just exactly what goes into emergency communications, dispatching of medical calls, law enforcement calls. So I hauled a couple guys in here, and they look so thrilled to be here. Michael Ballard is the communications supervisor, Mr. Bossman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Make sure you lean right into that microphone. And Jeffrey Crane on the front lines. He is an emergency services dispatcher. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
What were you guys thinking? I mean, let's start with you, Jeff. What got you into this line of work? Get right close to that microphone.
Well, I started as a volunteer firefighter. And after a few years, that test popped up. I thought, this could be an interesting way to get into emergency services. So I took the test, took a couple interviews, took the job.
How long have you been doing it?
20 years.
Wow. Let's talk about your story, Michael. How'd you get into this line of work and rise up the ranks to be, Mr. Bossman?
Well, I started out like Jeff as a firefighter in a volunteer fire department, and one of the dispatchers at the time said that there was a test coming up. So I took it for the heck of it. It took 3 years, and I finally got a call and been there for 25 years next month.
Jeff, what would you say was the biggest eye-opener making the crossover from just working in one specialized response, i.e. firefighting, to handling the whole gamut of calls that come into communications? What was the biggest eye-opener for you?
Probably the lack of a closure. I mean, as a firefighter, you're there from pretty much the beginning to the end, short of the phone call. As far as dispatching, you're there from the phone call with no idea how it turns out.
One of the things that has got to be difficult is your personal relationship with the men and women you work with, not only in the fire, but also emergency medical and law enforcement. As I was talking to Senator Akshar on a recent program, that he started out as a dispatcher. He said that it was the fact that the men and women in the communications and 911 centers are the first line of defense. You guys basically, are you like conducting triage where you get the call in to try to ascertain what level of seriousness this is and what needs to be sent out?
Yeah, to a point. There's policies we follow, rules we go by, but in essence, worst go first.
Yeah. And I know from listening to the radio that you have, different, A, B, C, and D, and A isn't necessarily the one that's most important, right?
Correct.
Okay. How does that get determined, though? You are not physically on the scene when a panicked parent is calling with what they could, in their eyes, is a very serious medical situation with a kid, but you're not there to be able to ascertain exactly how serious it is.
Yeah, we have what's called EMD, Emergency Medical Dispatch. It's a set of cards, list of questions. We go through it by the computerized version now, but it starts by asking the caller, breathing, losing blood, awake and speaking to you. It depends on what their main problem is, which card we go to. We follow the list of questions, and it actually tells us what level of priority that call winds up being.
One of our people here, a lowly disc jockey, he's all right. One of the things that he wanted me to ask you was, what I mean, it's going to be an emotional thing when you do have to call 911 to begin with, whether it's a fire or a medical call or somebody's breaking into your house or your neighbor's house. What kind of things should you kind of have rehearsed in your brain that you should have information ready to help you guys with your job in accurately assessing the situation and dispatching? Because it's hard to stay calm.
Step one, take a breath. You do need to be calm. We need to be able to understand you. The next thing we're going to need is your address. We can't do anything without an address. We always want to start with an address. I can't say that enough. One more time. We need the address.
Well, another thing, too, is if people don't have a close relationship with their neighbors, some of these municipalities have very weird numbering for the properties. For example, even the tiny little lot in the village of Johnson City is considered like two numbers. It's like a double lot. You could be at 188, and the next, right under your armpit neighbor is like 194 or something. It's just, and if there's somebody breaking into your neighbor's house, that's one thing I had to learn how to do is know what the numbers are for the other properties around me. Because I don't do anything bad. It's never my house.
We can work with that. Give us your address. It's the house on the left.
Okay. And cross streets are also helpful too, isn't it?
Yes, always. Preferably same side if you know it. If not, we can work with that. We're very flexible for the most part.
Michael, over the 25 years that you've been in this game, how have you seen the situations that dispatchers are called on to handle? How had that changed over the years? It seems to me that there's been some more serious stuff I've been hearing over the past several years.
Yeah, it's since 1993 when I started. The types of calls that we're starting to take are changing. They're evolving. Back then it was you'd get a fire here, you get the accidents there. Now, obviously, with the epidemic of heroin overdoses, the economy is not the greatest around here, which we all know, and we know that changes people's moods, I guess, for the lack of a better term. And people need help, and they're calling for a lot more stuff.
Fire calls that go out, we still get the chimney fires. We still get people that are leaving candles unattended, cooking fires. But exploding meth labs is a little bit of a problem. I mean, people that, we've had a lot of those over the past couple years.
Yeah, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, they were a lot. We were taking them on a regular basis. Over the last year or so, it's kind of declined some. I think it has to do with the difference of response. I believe on the law enforcement side, it's a law enforcement response with a fire standby now, whereas when it first started happening, it was everybody went and I believe they've changed their procedures now, which has helped at least response-wise.
It must be kind of tricky to determine the level of hazard when you think that you are sending out to an apartment house, for example, just a fire call, and then finding out it's a one-pot meth lab situation, and we're talking a lot of really hazardous materials. Is that information that comes back to you from the first responders on the scene, or are you able to determine when you get initial calls that somebody tips you off that there may be a situation where it's more than just a run-of-the-mill fire?
I think it all depends on the what's observed by the caller themselves. If it's you like you said, if a house explodes, they're not going to know that it was a meth lab type scenario unless these people know their neighbor and tell the dispatcher, hey, it's a meth lab. Yeah. Otherwise, it's once the responders get there and they start observing what's in and around that particular building, they make that determination. As far as dispatch is concerned, we would probably know it's a meth lab based on the other resources that get requested by, the incident commander there.
would you automatically, if you get that pre-information that it's a suspected meth lab, would there be other facilities that would be dispatched, for example, like hazmat and medical crews that normally would not be put out on that call?
That would be up. If once we got that information, that would be sent to the fire chief or the police officer, whoever's responding, and then they make that determination as to what they want further to respond.
Jeffrey, how do you remain calm when you're responding to something, you're sending out resources to something that you know is very bad? The American Civic Association shooting, the police shootings, the things like when the state trooper Skinner, which I knew him too, was run down, and you know that it doesn't sound good, but the voice that we're hearing over the scanners sound so calm. How do you hold it together, and what happens after everything is done that you can debrief and decompose?
Yeah, that's part of the great trick, we'll call it. Being able to, take a breath and not make it sound like it's affecting you.
Kind of disengage the emotions switch.
Yeah, you have to be able to step outside yourself until it's over. And when it's over, we're there for each other.
Yeah.
We'll all get together afterwards. We'll talk about it. If somebody needs more, we can contact each other. We know that.
I was saying to one of our people here that with how stressful this job is. How's your blood pressure, by the way, Jeff?
Yeah, mine isn't the greatest, but it's not bad.
Okay. But as stressful as this job is, I was talking to, I think it was one of my dispatchers earlier, that it seemed like these call centers should have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week counselor on standby to help you guys at the end of a call.
We do. The county has a critical incident stress team that is not only available to the dispatchers themselves, but it's available to any emergency services organization, whether it be police, fire, EMS, or otherwise.
How close do you guys get to the services that are out on the street? You must know everybody.
As far as close, yeah. You've probably noticed every time you would mention Skinner, we talked earlier about DW.
Yeah.
I feel that every time we discuss it. I mean, I love them guys.
Yeah. Mary Barta was on the board of directors at the Crime Victims Assistance Center with me. And I did not know Lee, but I got the phone call from my people to get over to the emergency room at Wilson on that day. And, and now Danny Barta is on the Binghamton Police Force. I think it was super that they gave him his dad's badge number. I thought that was great. But I don't know these people as well as you guys do. And once again, my blood runs cold when I hear the call on the scanner with your calm voice out there, and I'm going, oh my God, how is he not going, ah? And even with some of the old warhorse cops that are out there, at the end of the day, I've been told about them just sitting in the squad car for a little while with their head down on the steering wheel, just trying to let it go. That's why I would never be able to do it. A personal story, one of the other jurisdictions had approached me about it, but I said the first time I was trying to walk some hysterical parent through an infant CPR and the kid didn't make it, I would never be able to let it go. So I want to let you guys know that I really admire the stuff that you're doing, and you are appreciated. And I hopefully now the general public will have a better idea of what it is you guys are facing on the line, even though you are the dismembered voice that we hear over the radio. And you do have a first name. I found that out today. Believe it or not, we are out of time already, and I think this was a very interesting segment. I want to thank you and thank everybody back at Communications for me. And we're not all news weasels. we actually do appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity to tell our story.
All right, well, this is it. Thanks a lot. This has been the Southern Tier Close-Up, a weekly public affairs presentation of this station. Views expressed here do not necessarily reflect those of the station, its staff, management, or news department. This program was recorded for broadcast at this time. I'm Kathy Whyte for the Southern Tier Close-Up.